Okay, ladies and gentlemen, wonderful panel here talking about such a positive subject. And I just want to say that after October 7th, people automatically believed or feared that it would be the end of the Abraham Accords. And as the co-founder of the UAE-Israel Business Council, I kept getting calls continuously. Is it the end? Is it the end? And we have many friends in the Gulf that we spoke to in the aftermath of the Abraham Accords, in the aftermath of October 7th. And this is the answer that I always tell people when they ask me, is it over? And I say to them this, for me, the light at the end of the horrible, horrible tunnel that we're still in, that our hostages are still in, of this terrible catastrophe of October 7th has been that a month after, when the Arab League met, 22 states, to boycott Israel and America, it was the Abraham Accords signatories that vetoed it. That last April, when Iran attacked us through the night, it was the Abraham Accords countries, and including Saudi Arabia, that defended us with the UAE, and then the next day admitted that they defended us, which is huge. And again in September. So in fact, I'm very optimistic. And I have here an incredible panel of experts, friends, and leaders in their own fields who we're going to be discussing exactly this. So Dan Feferman, who is the chairman of Sharaka, which is a people-to-people Abraham Accords organization, just come back from a delegation to Auschwitz with young Arab men and women from across the region. Dan, after October 7th, what happened with Sharaka and where are we today?
Thank you, Fleur. Thank you, Fleur. And congratulations to JNS on such a fantastic conference, much needed conference at a very critical time. You know, after October 7th, it was very difficult. You and I had a lot of friends. I know we traveled to the Gulf together actually many times. And immediately after the attacks, I personally received hundreds and hundreds of messages of concern, of sympathy from our friends all over the region. You know, for the last 4 years, Sharaka, we've been bringing dozens and dozens of influencers and young leaders from all over the Arab world to Israel. But almost immediately, even before the IDF retaliation took hold, you saw a different narrative take shape. You saw the same kind of people who had visited Israel, who you and I had spent many Shabbat dinners with and had long conversations, people who should know better, start, first of all, showing sympathy for the Palestinian side. That's fine, as it should be, because even if it's Hamas's fault, there is suffering there, and we have to recognize that. But then you saw the propaganda take over. You saw the Al Jazeera propaganda, you saw the Hamas propaganda, you saw the Iranian propaganda and the Qatari propaganda. And friends, if we got defeated in one aspect of this war after October 7th, it was on the propaganda, on the media, on the social media front. And it took me a bit to digest, because as everyone here probably took it personally, I did too, more so because I'd invested years into developing these relationships. And what I came to understand after trips to the Arab world, after hosting many more delegations in Israel, and after many speaking tours all over with my Arab friends and colleagues, is that at the end of the day, we form our worldview based on the news feed and social media feed in front of our eyes. And so I don't blame them, because all they saw on the Arab news and on their social media algorithm was the suffering, real and imagined and exaggerated, of what's happening in Gaza, and nothing about what happened to the Israelis on October 7th, while we on our news saw the hostages, we saw the victims, we saw atrocity unfold, and each one was worse than the other. I can tell you, though, something else. A different narrative is taking shape in the Middle East, and my friends here can probably attest to that, and that is, while there are very few brave and morally courageous people who understand both sides of this, like my friend Luai here. I'm sorry, we just met, so I hope to call you a friend after this. But Luai is one of the few people who clearly and with moral courage stood up on his social media platform and defended Israel's right to defend itself. You did see a lot of critique for Hamas and for Hezbollah and for the Iranian access, also of the IDF, of dragging the region into war. And that's something, you know, for us it might seem like too little too late, but in the Arab world, if you know how to understand the Arab world and how progress is made, that's a seismic shift. That is a seismic shift. And I can tell you something else. You know, the Abraham Accords were top-down, right? And they're often criticized for being top-down, but they were brought about by visionary leadership. Not just visionary leadership here in Jerusalem and in Washington, but visionary leadership especially in Abu Dhabi, in Manama, behind the scenes in Riyadh, and in Rabat. And those leaders have long understood, but they were willing to finally do something about it. They understand that the Palestinian issue was never about the Palestinians. It was used cynically, it is used cynically by the radical access to distract, to divide, to radicalize populations. And as one of my Arab analyst friends told me, it has been hijacking and preventing the region from progressing as it should have prevented, which means Arab-Israeli unity and working together across scenes. I'll end with this. It's going to take decades to undo the deep radicalization. I didn't understand how deep the disinformation and demonization about Israel was in the Arab world until I jumped into this field. But something every single Arab intellectual and behind the scenes every Arab leader has told me, or that I've understood, is that for the Abraham Accords to have survived, right? And keep in mind, friends, keep in mind, not a single embassy was closed, not a single ambassador was pulled back from the Abraham Accords countries, not a single demonstration or major demonstration in the streets of these countries against Israel. Affirmations that the Abraham Accords are in place and will continue. Slight and subtle condemnations of Hamas. We expected more, but that's how they work. Okay? And the Saudis confirmed that peace was never off the table. For the Abraham Accords to survive and for them to continue into what I hope is now phase 2, they needed us to unequivocally defeat Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and the radical axis in this war.
Absolutely, because that shows them that it was worth making peace with Israel, which is a strong country that can stand up for itself. Kareem, taking a little shift to the business world, Kareem Yahya is the head of 972 Hub. We've met in many business conferences. You've done incredible work in building business bridges between Israel and the Gulf. And you yourself, as a proud Arab Israeli, are a bridge. You personify that bridge. Tell us how your experience has been in your field after October 7th, and if this gives you hope for the future in terms of business development with the Gulf.
So first of all, thank you, Fleur, for having me. Look, I've been doing business with the UAE and in general, the GCC, been helping startups, companies, founders excel and innovate and enter into new markets for the past couple of years. I'm very optimistic. Maybe because I am that way as a person, maybe because of my diplomatic background when my father was a diplomat. But I believe in our people. I believe that Israeli Arabs, Israeli Jews, we are strong enough as a people that we are smart enough to continue excelling and growing, and that shows. Countries all over the world see not only through our technologies and how good the technologies are, and as founders, as businessmen and women, they immediately understand how we can get up, dust ourselves off, and continue on forward. So honestly, I'm very optimistic. October 7 was a blow, a difficult blow to, I think, the entire world, specifically Israeli Arabs as well. Everyone was in shock. I'm not an expert on the field, and I don't know how to fix something that was so hard for both sides. Loss is loss, and it's tough. But I do know that if there are right opportunities and there is right business done between parties, there will always be that sort of tool that you can use to excel proper diplomacy. You can either use diplomacy with education, you can either use diplomacy, you use peace in order to excel diplomacy. So it depends on the tool you have. I think money is a good enough incentive to try and bring us to a new era.
Did deals fall through for you or things you were working on after October 7th?
No, to be honest, no. there were delays. There were hiccups here and there. But I'll be honest, actually things moved along faster, except the days that we had to be in shelters, except the days that, you know, there was a lot of uncertainty and we had to pause, so to speak. But business keeps, you know, the clock keeps ticking. And as Nir Barkat said a few moments ago, there's so many companies that have came to the UAE, to the GCC in general, from Israel, subsidiaries that have opened up, and you know, they are, their goal is to profit. So when the goal is to profit and people are working, everybody wants a salary, the clock has to keep ticking. It's tough to work in such an environment. I will say that the Emiratis and our Emirati partners and friends were the first to immediately rush in and ask, we saw the videos and we see this and that, how are you, how's the family? And you reply from within the shelter saying, oh, we're fine, we're okay, hopefully this passes. And so, a difficult time, in Safek.
Well, it's lovely to hear that you didn't feel that the business relationships collapsed. Luai Ahmed, my friend, you are from Yemen. You grew up as an anti-Semite because that's what you were taught. You moved to Sweden and you had an awakening at some point, and you just came back from your first trip to Auschwitz. When you think about how to engage the rest of the Arab world in what Dan has coined now as phase 2 of the Abraham Accords, what insights can you share with us from your own journey for us to look forward to regional peace and stability?
Thank you, Fleur, and thank you for having me here. I'm very honored to be sitting next to all of you. I want to bring the Abraham Accords back to the human aspect and kind of like bring it back to human beings, because the fact that we need the Abraham Accords is due to one thing and one thing only: anti-Semitism. I've had a very chilling week thanks to Dan, who invited me to go to Auschwitz for a week, and it was quite traumatic for me. But the most traumatic thing for me was in one of those buildings that we were walking into, there was a display of what Hitler and his politicians and his planners were saying in order to execute their plan. And as I stood in that room for around 30 minutes, just watching the speeches and watching what they were saying. And the reason for that is because go back 10 years ago to when I was in Yemen, Sana'a, and the vast majority of the things that Hitler and his friends were saying, Jews are contaminated. Jews, we need to find a solution for the Jews. They control everything and contaminate and destroy, and they're basically parasites that we have to deal with, and the only way we can deal with them is by eradicating them. Those lines are distant memories for many Jewish people who are descendants of the Holocaust, because it's something that you look back to the 30s and the 40s to see that kind of anti-Semitism in Europe. But to me, someone who grew up in Sana'a, Yemen, those lines and those kind of vitriolic extremist views on Jews not being human beings and being animals, and we have to get rid of them, it is the main discourse and narrative that I was brought up in Sana'a, Yemen. So when I told you, Fleur, on the quad that the first time that I met a Jew in Sweden, the hair on my body froze and I was shocked and I almost fainted, it is because of this brainwashing. The first time I met a Jew, I did not think that it was a human being. I thought it was a beast. I thought it was something that was going to kill me. And this is very quintessential to the Abraham Accords, because the Abraham Accords are not just about economic prosperity and the economic relationship between Israel and the Arab world, which is important. But what's more important is for the Arab world to realize and understand that the Jewish people were here before Islam. We need to understand that the Arab world needs to understand that Muslims and Jews and Christians, they descend and they follow the same history to a certain extent. And in this humanization, we can understand each other's pains and actually speak to each other. Because what we find right now with these Arab countries that refuse to negotiate with Israel is they don't want to come to the table at all. And I want to take a moment to thank Dan here, who is the CEO for Sharaka, because when October 7 happened, the reason that I started making videos and telling my family and friends killing Jews is not justifiable, Dan over here is quite the representative of the Abraham Accords, because he sent me a message on Twitter and said, hey, we would like to invite you to Israel. And the name of the organization was Sharaka. Sharaka in Arabic means partnership. As someone who grew up my entire life thinking that Israelis want to kill all Arabs, the fact that a Jewish man sent me a message of an organization with an Arabic name named Partnership, it made me realize, wait, maybe there is peace in Israel. And I ended up coming to Israel and finding out that there was no apartheid, and that it's a thriving country, and the Jewish community are incredible human beings. So I want to thank you, Dan, for bringing me to Israel for the first time, and I want to thank you for taking me to Auschwitz for educating me, because you did something that the Abraham Accords should be focusing on. We need to be focusing on the human relationships, bringing delegations from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, from Morocco to Israel. This is the way to humanize us, to humanize the Jewish community in the eyes of the Arab world, and that is the #1 priority.
Luai, your words are amazing. And of course, they resonate here, but just a small follow-up point. It's so prevalent, this hatred in the Arab world. How do you see a light? How do you see a light? How do we change this? Is it going to take generations if it happens at all? Do you see there could be other quicker fixes? How does this change, Luai? Give us some hope.
I think that in life, there's light and there's darkness, right? And I think when it comes to the Arab world and their anti-Semitism and moving away from it, we know that there is the dark, which is where I come from, Yemen, which is completely an uneducated society with curriculums. The curriculums that I grew up in Sana'a are the same that the ones that they have in Gaza, where I remember we crossed out evolution theory, and the teacher told us this is a Jewish conspiracy theory to destroy Islam. And that's evolution theory. Many scientific principles that contradict the Quran and Islam, who do we blame? The Jews. So the curriculums are the problem, the mosques and the schools, and we have to start there. Not just in Gaza. Gaza, the mosque and the reforms, I usually say, because my mom and I fight all the time about Israel because she's anti-Israel, and she keeps saying the occupation, the occupation, the occupation. And I tell her, Mom, I actually do think that Israel needs to occupy Gaza for real and enter the mosques and schools. That's where the occupation should be happening, in the mosques and schools, because these are the places where the children are being brainwashed to think that Jews are not human beings and that we need to kill them. So in order to cut the roots of this, we need to enter the schools and mosques and start there. And in terms of positivity, look at the UAE. The UAE used to preach vitriolic anti-Semitic curriculums, but now that they're heading towards the light, they no longer say the Zionist entity, but the Jewish state. And they're nearing a more humane and more humanistic approach towards Israel. So we need to follow the UAE.
Absolutely. UAE also introduced Holocaust education into their curriculum a number of years ago.
Exactly.
And Saudi Arabia have also begun making significant changes in their curriculum. So there is hopes. And I think that we need to start with mosques and schools, not just in the Arab world, but how about Europe and America too? Thank you very much to my distinguished panel.